Hey guys, Mrs. Keller here. I hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to review with you some of the material that you went over earlier this year. Today we're going to look at primary versus secondary sources. We're going to look at careers in social studies. We're going to look at geography, and then we're going to cover a little bit of the pandemic. So if we look at history as a mystery and we want to figure out what happened, we're going to look at primary versus secondary sources. Which one is better? Well, I would say that both are very good. And we look at primary sources. Primary sources are those and diary entries, letters, artifacts that were in existence or created during the time period that we're studying. So me being the history geek here, I happen to have a letter by Thomas Jefferson that was written in 1803. Okay, this would be considered a primary source because he wrote it at that time period, 1803. So when we look at primary sources, they give us some unique insight as to what was going on in that time in history. However, they may give us a limited view of what was going on in that time in history. So, for instance, if you were to interview a doctor or a nurse during this pandemic and you kept that interview and it was published 10 years down the road, that would be considered a primary source. However, it would not be considered a comprehensive source, so to speak. It would not give information about what's going on in this pandemic as a whole. So you're not getting information about what's going on in the business world or in education. Secondary sources, however, are more comprehensive in nature. These are going to include your textbooks, dictionaries, biographies. These are going to be usually written by researchers, those who study history, those people who have data to include science and can make the history more comprehensive. So you're including all aspects. Okay, moving on to careers in social studies. So we have archaeologists, we have economists, we have political scientists, we have sociologists and psychologists. There's a lot of different fields that you could go to when you talk about social studies. An archaeologist, right here, you happen to have a skeleton. And so archaeologists are going to look at artifacts. They're going to study them. They're going to study bones. They could study, an archaeologist study any artifact. It could be anything. It could be a brick from a fireplace. It could be a piece of pottery. Archaeologists are going to try to piece together what happened in the past and the way of life of the people in the past. You also have economists. Economists are going to look at businesses, money, supply and demand. Economists right now are going to be studying what's going on with the economy in regards to this pandemic. They're going to look at the stock market. They're going to look at businesses. They're going to look at this idea of giving Americans money to help them get through the next couple of months. This is what economists do. And economists work closely with political scientists. Political scientists deal with the law, governments, criminal justice. They're the ones who are going to be creating the law. A lot of them, political scientists, become politicians or attorneys. Very important field. We also have a geographer. Geographers are people who look at the environment or the land and its impact on people. So if you look at the way geography affects people or cultures, I like to look at Native Americans because Native Americans were able to adapt to the regions where they lived. So if you look at, and I like the example of the Iroquois, building the longhouses, because they have wood, they live in a wooded area. And so the Native Americans were able to adapt to their local land. Looking at geographers too, a lot of them study the climate too. In their study, they study global warming. So that might be a field that might be interesting to you. Okay, along with paleontologists, archaeology and paleontology similar. Looking again at artifacts, but paleontologists specifically look at fossils, and that yeah, that are bones that are left in remains of rocks. So paleontologists closely related to the field of archaeology, where they're looking at materials from the past. And again, all of these fields are trying to, again, piece together what happened in the past. Okay, geographic features. I know you've probably studied mountains, you've looked at peninsulas, archipelagos. Geography has a huge impact on civilization. I know that you studied the early river valley civilizations, and we know that river valleys allowed for civilizations to grow, using the water to irrigate crops, and that allowed for farming, that then allowed for these civilizations to um, prosper. So I think you learned about the four specific early river valley civilizations. It's going to be Mesopotamia, the Indus River Valley, uh, Egypt, the Nile, and then China. So geography can bring people together, bring society together, or it can divide them. So deserts and mountains can divide cultures. Okay, river valleys can bring them together. They could also bring together invaders. I think I spoke of the Vikings when we were last time we were in school, about how the Viking boats could go into 3 feet of water. They could sail into parts of England and take over. So geography can divide and bring cultures together. Okay, current events. Why are we social distancing? Well, we want to get this curve where we would have a lot of sick people all at once down, and we want to, when they say flatten the curve, we want to, if we're going to have people getting sick, we want to make sure that it's spread out over a longer period of time, so that we are not overwhelming our healthcare systems. So that is what we're talking about when we're flattening the curve. And why are we social distancing? Well, we know this is community spread, community disease. So people that get this disease get it when they're in groups, large groups, because the virus lives for a long time on surfaces, and it can be spread through the air with people who are sick and sneezing. So that's why we're trying to stay, I believe it's 6 feet apart, and we're trying to social distance and stay home. What does it mean exactly to you? Well, it means you can't go to the theater. A lot of people are home, they're not working. You can't take the bus. You certainly shouldn't be going um, to concerts where there's a large number of people. You have to be very careful. Traveling might not be a good idea right now. Um, so you have to be careful. Even if you go grocery shopping, you have to use caution when you do that. And then safe to do, they have here, like walking the dog, working in the yard, cooking a meal with your family, group video chats or games. I know you guys know nothing about that. Haha. Um, okay, so that's what social distancing means. Oh, and I found out an interesting fact. So, guess who has a TikTok account? The World Health Organization. So, you can follow them on your TikTok and get all sorts of news about the coronavirus. All right. Well, I hope I was able to help you a little bit with review. If you have any questions or comments, I'm going to try to work on video quality. Of course, all these platforms are free, so I'm hoping that I can improve as I go along. All right. Have a good day.